Hello everybody. Alright, look at that. San Diego Charter Company. Nice play on words. San Diego. Hey, anyway, so I wanted to actualize on a suggestion to myself yesterday, which is maybe considering a playlist to the channel for project management and business analysis, which is my career. Probably to most people, if I've already done a good job of distancing myself from a lot of my old viewers from Japan, if I haven't put the nail in the coffin for everybody, this will probably do it. But I don't imagine there'll be too many videos on this series. So the video series will be called Diary of a Project Manager, and as the name suggests, this will be my recording of thoughts, observations, recommendations, best practices that I find useful as a project manager. So let's begin by first a little bit of an introduction to what this topic is and who I am as a project manager, which actually I'm not, and then and go from there. Well, actually I am, but I'm not. Okay, so what I mean by that is, let's take that in reverse order. So I am a project manager. Most of my time in my career is spent as a project manager. But if you come visit my desk, you won't see Kurt Bell, project manager, listed there. You'll see Kurt Bell, IT Business Systems Analyst 3, which is my formal title. So let's break down that name a little bit. Let's break down and talk a little bit about the distinction between project manager and business analyst. And let's talk about business analyst first. So let's start with that very two words, business analyst. Now there's different types of business analysts, and I think the name is quite self-descriptive. So you can imagine that a business analyst job is to analyze information for business purposes and to produce documentation that is useful to the business. And that's precisely what we do. So a typical business analyst job, for example, would be to be presented with a problem and then to begin a process by which facts about the problem are gathered and then confirmed with everybody that's immediately identifiable that's related to the problem. These are the immediate stakeholders and the project sponsor, one or more sponsors. And the sponsor, of course, is the person who really owns this project. And it's usually a manager or an executive, someone with some power that is, for example, has to implement something for their business unit. The stakeholders are the people that have some basically to whom this new product or service will touch or impact, either as customers, as employees who service it, or as participants in the project in the development, implementation and maintenance of it. So an analyst will initially come up with a plan for how to extract out all the necessary information from all the necessary parties. Part of that is identifying all those parties, and then distill all of that down into several documents that can then be used by the decision makers to make informed, intelligent decisions. So just take that. That's pretty much it. That's what a business analyst does. And most of the time, a good job description for us is that our job is to think, to communicate, and to capture data that can then be used by the business to make good decisions. That's a business analyst job. Now my title, if you saw that, it actually says there's a little more to it. I'm an IT business systems analyst. And of course IT is information technology. And that simply means that I'm a business analyst that specializes in IT, the IT world. In particular, solutions related to IT. I happen to work for an agency that is an IT agency. So I spend as an IT business systems analyst, I do all the aforementioned work for IT infrastructure and IT applications, IT processes, IT business. I wear a number of different colored hats in that role, but most of them have the word IT on there somewhere. And also I'm a 3, so in the industry we tend to give people different numbers, suffix to their name. So a business analyst, and it doesn't always go 1, 2, 3. You can have, I've seen other cases where it's been like lead or senior or something like that. But 1, 2, 3, as you might expect, is 1 is entry level for the most part. 2 is journeyman, so to speak, and 3 would be the top level before, at least in my organization, before becoming a supervisor. And then from supervisor you would then go into a management role. So the difference is the level of expectations. Ones are really just they're entry level. They are there learning the ropes, and they're not expected to really lead the projects or to play that role. A 2 is being groomed for that, for more responsibility, and is also expected to be, and then the 1 too, especially be educating themselves, bringing themselves up to speed. And the 3, that's really a lead role. The 3 should be able to own a project through the entire life cycle as a BA, understand what documents need to be performed, what steps need to be done, everything from requirements right on down to getting signatures on the final documents that then are handed over to the project manager to run the project. So that's a BA, or an IT BSA, Business Systems Analyst. Or there's that distinction as well. Sometimes there's here BA, Business Analyst, or Business Systems Analyst as well. And there's a lot of flexibility in the industry. There's formal definitions, but there's also flexibility in usage. Let's now talk about the project manager. And just a moment ago I described a situation where the business analyst had completed their work, had a completed set of documents identifying what a project, what some business product, service, or process look like, that is now ready to be implemented, and he or she will then hand that over to a qualified project manager to take it from there. Now imagine if this was the Army, the BA would be the intelligence, planning, and logistics units of the Army that come up with the overall plan, and when it's time to execute, they'll hand that over into the hands of a general, who then has his or her command all of the instruments of war that can then fulfill the mission. That's what the project manager does. But the project manager is unlike a general. a project manager typically doesn't have much power, but that's okay. We have a secret weapon that allows us to achieve our ends, and I'll get to that in just a moment. The project manager, once they receive the product of the analyst's work, can then take that information and develop a project plan and a project schedule. Now there are other documents, a whole host of documents that can be used along the way, everything from a business case scenario, business case document. Of course, you'll have to get all kinds of hardware, software, system specifications, and then lots of different types of things if money is involved. Cost benefit analysis. We don't use all of these documents in every case. Part of the project manager's job is to come up with a plan for what documents will be prepared, which documents need signature and sign off on, and then to begin to execute. Felt like the bike kind of stalled out there for just a sec. Hope it's okay. It's an old bike after all. So once the project manager has the project, their job then is to assemble a team of the initial group of who's going to work on the project, and hold a kickoff meeting, and they'll have an agenda for the meeting, and the agenda will help to communicate to the team what their roles are, what their expectations of each team member is. And the team member at this point consists of leads. So typically we'll have a lead from each of the groups that we think needs to be involved. Maybe that's going to be the application development group, the database administrators, the systems administrators, the field services group, the quality assurance testers, the network administrators. We'll have people from the business relationship management group that interface with our customer if we have a BRM. And I'm really trying hard now not to just tread onto my actual work. I'm speaking in just generic terms with all of this. So I'll typically invite representatives from all those people, thank them for being a part of the team. And one of the things I need to figure out is who are we missing? And I'll need their help to help me flesh out what pieces of the puzzle are not at that meeting or not a part of it, so that I can get them involved as well. And then we begin to develop more documentation. That will be usually in my projects for the type of organization I work with. I either develop for small projects what's simply called a scope document that identifies what is within and what is without project scope. Scope being defined, of course, is what we're actually going to do. If it's a medium to a large project, the scope document will be incorporated into something called a charter. And the charter is really a manifesto for the project, from the project manager's perspective. It lays out at really an executive level. And when I say executive level, I mean the language is written in such a way that you can give this to, somebody with executive officer at the end of their name, or a high-ranking manager, and not waste a lot of their time having them wade through 150 pages of documentation, but within 5 to 10 pages get a really good idea about what the project is all about. And you have to do it in such a way that if you give that same document to 5 people from different parts of the organization, they're all going to come away with pretty much the same idea. That's where the real art of being a BSA in particular, but also being a project manager, lies in being able to create documentation that is not subject to wide-ranging interpretation. It's pretty clear what we mean, so that when that document is done and when it's been signed by our project sponsor, that everybody is very clear about what we're going to do. There's no surprises along the way, but I thought that meant something else. So once we have our charter and once we have it signed, that means that our responsible parties are actually in agreement. Then we proceed to either come up with a project plan, which isn't always come up with. The plan is a deeper dive from the charter. It covers a lot of the same information, but it goes into whereas my charter might be 5 to 10 pages, my project plan maybe 20 or more, and it's got a lot more detail. If in my charter I recognized five participants, a lead from each of my groups that's going to be involved in the project. The team that's identified in my project plan will have 25 people or more. That's because the leads are really the responsible parties. For example, the testing group, I'll have a lead tester, but that lead tester isn't the person that's going to actually do the testing. That lead tester is going to identify maybe 2 or 3 of their members from their team who will actually do the heavy lifting of the work. I need to know who those people are, but I'm going to hold that lead tester accountable for their unit, that group's success. It's important to keep that in mind. Your leads are the accountable parties. In fact, in project management methodology, the single letter A for accountable is very, very important. You want to make sure that every working group has someone with an A next to their name, meaning that they are the accountable member. And you also have to make sure that they know that they are that person. They are accountable. Okay, after the project plan is done, guess what we got to do now? We got to get that thing signed. And next comes the project schedule. The schedule actually lays out how we're going to do things. Now, if it's a development project, we're developing an application, then it's going to be a development timeline. And if it's going to be a deployment for new systems or hardware or software, then it's going to be a deployment timeline. But they both basically have a very similar life cycle. And there's different standards out there. There's the PMBOK standard, the waterfall standard, the ITIL standard. I happen to be an ITIL guy, so my projects tend to have the ITIL methodology, which in summarizes basically there's 4 phases: the initiation phase, the planning phase, the execution phase, and the closure phase. And then on top of those 4, those are the actual life cycle phases, there's a 5th part that is the continual service improvement. I got to put like a registered trademark next to that, because that is a particular term for the ITIL life cycle, where you maintain the product or service after it's been deployed. And I'm getting off into the weeds now. But what I want to point out now is that the role of the project manager, the role of the business analyst are very distinct. But most organizations that I've worked in tend to blur the lines. I've actually never worked in an organization that did exactly what I just told you about. Had a BSA or a BA doing all of the analytical work up front, then hand off to a project manager. That's in a perfect world. Usually it's the same person, and I'm used to that, and I expect that that's usually the case. As a BSA or a project manager, then it's very important that I make my sponsors understand that I'm actually wearing 2 hats. I have 2 roles, and that if they want me to succeed, they need to let me fulfill each of those roles. And that means in a medium to large size project that I can't jump into implementation. Usually everybody, it's like Christmas. They want to get started right away. But we need to do our initial legwork. And like for example, I have a meeting next week where I may get roped into a very large project, and I need to think about it now and kind of give them a rough estimate of how much time I need up front to do the initial legwork, because I know they want to jump into it right away. So now let me get down to, so I think I've covered the BSA, BA, and the project management roles. Both of these career paths are very good career paths. Now, what kind of qualifications do you need for these? Well, I won't go into the academic part yet, but let me just say that if you're the type of person that likes to sit at a computer and dig deep, lose yourself in the details of reading and writing beautiful documentation without having to interact too much with people, you can't get away with that, not doing it, but not as much, then the BA or BSA role is probably a good one for you. Because you're going to be spending time talking to people, but you're also going to be spending a lot of time digesting facts and writing business documentation. On the other hand, if you're a people person and you like to be the center of attention in a meeting, leading meetings, writing agendas, working out issues, seeking after status, especially the problem-solving part, the working out of issues, then that's probably you're probably project manager material. You have to have outstanding communication skills, phenomenal people skills. You have to have the diplomacy. Well, I won't say Henry Kissinger. I know he's a controversial figure these days, but you'd have to have the diplomacy of a great diplomat as well. Let's see if that elicits any Henry Kissinger comments either way. Now, let's talk just a moment. I think I've covered both, and I'm almost home. I went through a lot already. Now, to become one or the other, you can indeed go to school and get trained. You can become, there are BA, BSA, and project management educational career tracks that you can take. Look it up. You can find it. Get yourself, then you can tag on some suffixes to the back of your name, like PMP, Project Management Professional, which makes the gold standard for getting jobs, and you can have yourself a career. And there's a strong demand. These people there's not enough of them, and I don't think that automation and computerization is going to threaten these careers in the way that other careers are threatened, because of the incredible need for deep, critical human thinking, to be able to take complex ideas and make them human-friendly and legible. Computers aren't so good at that. Sensitive, conscientious, smart human beings are still much better than computers at that. Like I said before, making a document that can be read by 5 different people from 5 different backgrounds, and they all come up with the same idea. That's an art. However, you can also get started right away in any organization that small to medium size, of course large size. Large size is a little harder to get involved because they usually have their established methodologies, established groups. But if you work in a medium-sized organization, all you need to do is spot where projects need to be done, get yourself familiar with the processes, and then insert yourself in there. And before long, 1 or 2 successful projects under your belt where you're able to complete a project under budget, on time, with a happy customer. And guess who's going to be the organization's new project manager? Yes, you will. That will be you. And then it's only a matter of doing that enough that you can qualify for the PMP. And no one's really going to care, for the most part, whether or not, for the most part, some big HR firms at, big, huge Fortune 500 companies will care. But you can get yourself a job as a project manager by having a nice resume CV of success to show. And salary is very good, and especially if you can get the IT part. The IT part pays even better. So I think that's it. I think I better stop because it's my off-ramp. I'm going to give this gun. See, the gun, it felt like the motor kind of cut out, but it seems to be okay right now. Doing 90, smooth as silk. Hopefully this guy won't come over. Let's get past him. Coming through at 80 miles an hour, 70. Nice, smooth. Okay. I was going to tell you about the silver bullet, so let me just finish with that real quick. Project managers and BSAs typically don't have a lot of power. We are worker bees, and especially the project manager is in a rough position because they are put in the captain's seat of a ship running the project, and the stakeholders are usually more than happy to give over responsibility. I'll emphasize that word, responsibility, for the project, but they don't always give us the power, which puts us in a bad position because everybody and their brother and sister are telling us what needs to be done and how soon it needs to be done, and especially the stakeholders are telling us, well, I want it done now or next week or some unreasonable amount of time. And who are we to say no? Because we don't have any power. We're just a lowly BSA or project manager. We have the silver bullet, which is our power to identify, analyze, communicate, and recommend risk. Which then, so for example, let's say that a customer tells me, I tell them that I need 3 months to do a proper requirements analysis to know what the scope of the project really is going to be, to make sure we don't miss anything and that I can come up with a decent schedule. And they say, no, I want to start engineering next week. My response to that, I can't argue with the sponsor. Who am I going to argue with a manager, right? My response is then to go back to my desk and write up a risk report detailing in that beautiful clear language that we BSAs and PMs can do, that beautiful language, exactly what the risk is, what the consequence is, and then options, and then a recommendation, even if we are so bold. I always put a recommendation in. And then we deliver that back to the sponsor and we say, we understand what you want us to do. We've identified risk associated with that decision. Here is a risk report, and it's then in their hands. And I, as a project manager, I require approval. Either it's a written approval giving me a choice or a decision to be made. They then are in a position of, they can read through that and see exactly what they're asking and what the potential consequences might be. And if they disagree with that, that's fine. But at least as a project manager, they may not want to sign off on that. But if they disagree, they just kind of ignore it. Then you proceed, but at least you have armed yourself with the analysis that was needed to show that's the case. And I'm not the type of person to, cover my ass, play cover your ass, but that's what you have to do when you don't have power, but you do have the responsibility. And what usually happens, gosh, and I think in just every case, in my own personal experience, once they see it in black and white, so clearly written, and when you give them options that are reasonable options, they will usually elect to choose a reasonable option. And what that does is that gets the project back on track. It keeps us on track, and it prevents us from making a dangerous mistake. If they elect to go ahead and accept the risk, and that is the actual name of the risk option, is acceptance. If they accept that risk, then guess who has the responsibility for having accepted the risk? The stakeholder or the project sponsor. And that is how, as a project manager, we mitigate risk, the main goal being to mitigate the risk, to make sure that we can find a way around the risk. And if we're not able to mitigate it, and we're told to carry on anyway, then we can at least protect ourselves and our reputation from the rocks that we see that we're headed towards. And by the way, just to dovetail last bit, you know, I have another series called the Good Life series, where I list every day my objectives and my principles. And one of those is apathy. Apathy is the quality of being able to recognize what is and what is not within our control, and to not get upset about things that we can't control. Like, if my bike was to break down and just end up on the mountain, I would use my apathy to not get upset and flail around at the side of the road and say, oh my gosh, but instead to calmly recognize that that was something I couldn't control, and to call the tow truck, call my wife and daughter, let them know what's up, and take care of things in a calm, collected manner. Apathy, as a project manager in particular, is an incredibly useful tool to recognize when a situation is outside of our control. People more powerful than us are guiding the ship, are guiding things, and to not let ourselves get upset over something that we can't control anyway, and instead to find a reasonable method to try to rein in, to bring in some measure of reason into the situation via, for example, risk management. Hey, there's that term again. But that's like the third video in a row I've talked about risk management. And you know, okay, that's it. I'm home. I gotta get upstairs. Emily's at Disneyland today with her school, having some fun with a choir group she's with. So little Ollie the dog hasn't had a chance to go out and go pee this afternoon. So fortunately I was able to get out of work early, because my class that I was taking is a East Coast time class, so I was there early in the morning. If you see my Good Life video for today, you'll see I arrived at the parking lot when it was dark. Nobody was there, so I got to leave early, so that's good, so I can get home and take little Ollie boy out. See my little Ollie boy. Well, thank you, and this is my first video in the diary of a project manager series. Thanks for joining me. We'll see if we have more of these. If there's interest, let me know if you like this kind of stuff. And maybe we can get some more project managers out there, and BSAs, and BAs. Heck, heaven knows we need more of those. Okay, take care everybody. Bye-bye. Salute.